top 10 among other private engineering colleges in Tamil Nadu. So Chennai University of Technology follows a unique teaching process, which is helping us to put our students in a core companies, and it helps us the students to put them in a very good, what we call higher studies, higher studies in a very good institution of higher studies. So it is our great pleasure to welcome you, our departments once again, and it is my great pleasure to welcome and request our Honorable Chairman to share few words in this wonderful forum, sir.
Yeah. Good evening. Thank you very much for all the participants and Dr. Dinagar for organizing this international seminar on research, art of publishing papers and patenting, and also converting projects. And my personal thanks on behalf of me, on behalf of the institution, on behalf of all the participants to Professor Dr. Debroy. Thank you for being with us. You have so much knowledge, and we are all, we wanted to learn from you, your wisdom, your knowledge, you are willing to share. That is it's a huge opportunity for us. Not only participants, people like me also would like to hear from you. I'm sure this talk will ignite the people's mind, those who are listening to him, because he's a living legend. So the kind of knowledge, learning, you go through this profile, then you can understand. Amazing. And I don't want to take much time. I wanted to, like all of you, I also would like to listen from Professor. Thank you very much for your time, sir. Thank you. You can go. You can introduce, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for your motivation. And now I request Ms. Varsasri, student of second year mechanical engineering, to introduce our Debroy, sir.
Good evening, everyone. This is Varsha, pursuing second year mechanical engineering at Chennai Institute of Technology. It's a great pleasure and honor for me to welcome you all for the second day of international seminar on art of writing scientific articles, funding proposal, and patent. Dr. T. Debroy, Professor of Material Science and Engineering, the Pennsylvania State University, USA, did his PhD in the Department of Metallurgy from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, in the year 1974. He completed his postdoctoral from Imperial College of Science and Technology, London, England, in the year 1977. Currently, he is the Professor in Material Science and Engineering in the institution Pennsylvania State University and has research experience since January 1980. His expertise is skills in numerical modeling, materials engineering, welding, additive manufacturing, solidification in aluminum alloys, and many more. His research is focused on computational materials processing, particularly the application of numerical transport phenomena and optimization in welding and additive manufacturing. His models compute the most important factors that affect metallurgical product quality, such as temperature, velocity fields, cooling rates, and solidification parameters. He has achieved over 5 awards from the year 2003 to 2017 and has successfully processed 2 projects in the field of additive manufacturing. He has published over 350 plus research articles in the journals of high repute. We are very glad to have you, sir.
Yeah. We request you to present. You can speak. So now, you can share your screen.
Just give me a minute. So thank you all very much for all your kind words. Actually, I am a learner, and I probably don't have anything special to add to all your professors and teachers and mentors, because I view myself as a fellow traveler. But in my travel, I have failed many times. And I hope I have learned 1 or 2 things from those failures, which I want to share with you. Yes, I have written many papers, fortunately in many good journals. However, most of the work was conducted by students, many of whom came from distant lands, all the way from China to India to Europe to America to many other places, faraway places. So I want to share with you, especially those of you that are young researchers, because I think the whole future is ahead of you, and there are certain rules for publication that actually would can make a difference. I learned it the hard way, but I think if you know those rules, then things would be far easier. So let me stop here because we are making use of high technology, and ask our host if I am audible, if you can hear me very clearly.
Yes, sir. Please, sir. It's good, sir. Please go ahead, sir.
All right. So the topic is for young researchers, which means that it's the rules that I'm going to be focusing on, and rules for writing peer-reviewed papers so that you can actually focus on communication and less on frustration. So the topics I plan to cover are motivation for publication. We have to be clear in our own mind as to why we are in this particular venture. What are the different types of papers that you can write? Most people think that they are limited to writing a paper, right? But not actually so. I can tell you in early 2010s, I was part of a committee appointed by Jiao Tong University in China, in Shanghai. And the chairman or the director of the Jiao Tong University, Professor Zi Zhang, himself wrote an article in Nature explaining what it would take for Chinese scientists and engineers to be prominent authors. And this is the Jiao Tong University is one of the foremost universities in China. And if their chairman and their director can write a paper in Nature, I would suggest that all of us should try to write papers in our respective fields. So what are the types of manuscripts? Not everything is technical paper. And then if we want to publish with less frustration, we need to have a checklist of what our article should contain so that it has the maximum opportunity to get good reviews and publish it quickly. What are the essential elements of a manuscript that are actually evaluated when we submit our manuscript for publication? And what are the ethics? What can we do and what can we not do? How do we select where we send our paper for publishing? And how do we actually make sure that it's going to get reasonable peer review? And then finally, I would summarize all of it. So that's the plan I have for the next 40 minutes or so. So why publish? You know, Charles Duell, who was the commissioner of US Patent Office long time ago, he said at one time, everything that can be invented has been already invented. So one can say that in the Library of Congress, one library, there are 700 million books. So the question is, do we need more? What do you think? Do we need more papers and more articles when there are so many books, 700 million books? And do you know how many papers are published every year that are cataloged by the Web of Science? Do you want to guess? Unfortunately, I cannot hear you. So I would say, I would give the answer. In the core collection of the Web of Science, we have 3 million or so papers. And if you take all databases that include Russian and other language, Chinese and other language publications, it will be 9 million per year. So every year we are contributing about 9 million papers. And does it matter whether I write 1, 2, 5, 10, 20 papers? What difference does it make in terms of adding to the 9 million papers? Is it much? I mean, I leave that question to you, but this was the scene from my 21st floor apartment in Brazil, where I was a Fulbright distinguished chair. And I could see the sunlight early morning, every morning, and some days I would have the rain. So the raindrops were adding to the sea. So writing a paper is like adding raindrops to the sea. Does the sea change? That's the question, right? My answer to that is absolutely the sea changes. It's like little drops of water and little grains of sand that make the mighty ocean and the pleasant land. Are we having any technical problems? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Please, you can go ahead, sir. No, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay.
Participants, kindly mute your audio and video, please. Sir, you can go ahead, sir. Please, sir.
Okay. So just like little drops of water make the mighty ocean, I think our papers have
PSV
their
bracket
place.
కామా delimited సార్.
Sorry?
PSV లో బ్రాకెట్ లో ఏముంటదంటే కామా delimited అంటుంది.
Sir, sorry, sir. Sorry, sir. Please go. See.
All right.
ఏది మీరు ఆఫీస్ ఏది వాడుతున్నారు?
Srinivasa, Mr. Srinivasa, switch off these things.
ఇది విండోస్ ఆఫీస్ ఓఎస్ తో సంబంధం లేదు సార్.
Sir, please go ahead, sir. Please.
Okay. So I can hear a conversation in my ears. All right. So think of it like this. Think of Sir C.V. Raman, or think of Professor Satyendra Bose and his illustrious students like Meghnad Saha and others, and think of Ramanujan. But for publication, would the world know of their contributions? So that's one of the reasons why I think we are here, right? That unless you publish, unless we publish, there is no way for all your work to be known by the rest of the world. And I'm actually waiting to read your papers. So, purpose. I'm going to give you a short quiz and you have to select. Unfortunately, we are on technology age and I won't be able to see your reactions. But one of the appropriate answers could be you are writing papers because you have to earn a degree like BTech or Masters or PhD or what have you. Second, you may like to impress people near you, right? Maybe you would like to impress your mother, or maybe your advisor, or maybe your significant other, or maybe everyone else. And maybe that's not your objective. Your objective is to get a better paid job. That's a good objective as well. And maybe your objective is completely pure and you want to communicate rigorous new knowledge to the rest of the world. Or maybe, may just be, you want to avoid wasteful duplication. Unless you publish your work, people don't know what exactly you have done. So some other people may repeat the work you have done, right? You don't want that. And then let me see if I can move this bar. Okay, here. Prevent the loss of valuable knowledge because you have created new knowledge when you do research, right? So that may be another reason. So that's our reason for publication. Oops, I can't get my screen to change. Okay, so communicate rigorous new knowledge, avoid duplication of work. Those are good reasons and prevent valuable loss of knowledge. Why publish? Well, you want to find methods for dissipating new knowledge. So how can you dissipate new knowledge? You can tell your advisor, you can write a thesis, you can speak at a conference. So it says I'm muted by the host, unmuted by the host.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead, sir. It's going. Please go ahead, sir.
You can write a report and maybe win a prize. You can write a conference paper. You can write in a peer-reviewed journal. That's the desirable forum, right? So why publish? Mostly the correct answer is that you can write in a peer-reviewed journal paper. Why a peer-reviewed paper? Well, because then it has a seal of approval from your peers, people who matter most to you. If they say this is something they would like to write, then it's worth writing, right? All right. So the other reason is that if you have great ideas and you have brought that idea to fruition, but you have kept it only to yourself, of course, then it's not worthwhile because nobody else would know about your great idea. So that's why we have the phrase publish or perish. So we do have to publish. There is no two ways about it. All right. So question is, publish what? Well, it's new knowledge useful to readers. And not only new knowledge useful to readers, it has to be in a timely manner. That means I cannot sit on my discovery for 10 or 20 years and hope that after 20 years, it will be contemporary. None of us are that far ahead of ourselves so that we can actually claim that. So publish it now, as soon as possible. That's what I mean. So what are the types of papers? Most people think papers are only technical papers. Actually, that is not so. There are things like reviews. There are some journals that publish reviews. Reviews are most difficult thing to publish, good reviews. Some journals only publish great reviews. Examples would be Nature Reviews. If you can get a paper in the Nature Reviews, you have made it, because most people cannot publish in Nature Reviews unless you get an invitation from the editors of Nature Reviews. You cannot even submit a paper to Nature Reviews. They won't even consider it. So it's a very difficult thing to do. Perspectives. These are shorter reviews, like Nature Materials or Nature Biotechnology, they publish perspectives. And so does Science and Technology of Welding and Joining, the journal I had the honor of editing for last 24 years. So perspectives are points of view. You actually do not have to do your own research, but you have to bring some new ideas and you have to substantiate the idea with evidence. So this has to be evidence-based ideas on contemporary topics that would be of interest right away by a large group of people. Letters to the editors are less common. It's normally comments on published articles, and then almost always letters to the editor would be accompanied by a rebuttal from the authors that are actually publishers of the original paper about which these comments are directed. Editorials, this is basically to introduce a special issue of a journal on a contemporary topic. Say there is a topic on 3D printing, and an editor writes how 3D printing is connected to welding in a journal that focuses mostly on papers on welding. Then writing reviews, 1 or 2 words, are more difficult. So why is it more difficult? You have to point out the gaps in understanding in a review. There has to be a purpose. And that purpose requires, that purpose requires a thorough knowledge of the entire field and the contemporary topics in this particular field. So that comes with experience. A review is simply not a collection of who did what. If I took a whole bunch of abstracts and put together a review, it will be rejected at the desk of the editor. It will not go for peer review. So they are most useful if they establish facts that are not available in individual papers. So that's a hard thing to do as well. I will give you an example of what I mean later on. So here is a graph of hardness versus carbon equivalent. Carbon equivalent is a measure of composition of iron alloys. So if people are doing an experiment or maybe a series of experiments and say that my Vickers hardness varies between these 2 values, that's coming from one technical paper. But if you do a survey and you find a trend between the composition and hardness of an alloy, then those results are the fruit of compilation. Without compilation, it would not have been possible to create this graph. And therefore, this particular graph belongs in a review, but you will not find this particular graph in any individual papers, technical papers. That is what made the technical papers different from the reviews. And this particular graph, I want to give credit where it belongs, was created not by me, but my co-author, Professor Sir Harry Badesia of Cambridge University. He created this particular graph. This is one of the many graphs in a review that we wrote in Progress in Material Science in 2008 or 2009. So this is much more time consuming. You cannot simply read a bunch of papers, take their summary and write a review. That is not going to be a review, all right? So our focus today is going to be technical papers and how to write good technical papers. What are the characters of good technical papers? In a technical paper, there has to be a reusable insight, and it has to be useful to readers. What does that mean? Reusable insight means it has to be, it can be used. Whatever we are producing is useful. Now, who judges what is useful and what is useless? Well, of course, our peers, and that is why we have the peer review. So it has to be useful to the reader. That's the foremost thing. What does that mean? I cannot simply redo something that other people do. It's not going to be Johnny come late. So many people have published something. I'm taking a different system and I'm repeating the same repetitious experiment. That is bad from get-go. And you have to be conscious of the rules before you start doing your research. After you have finished doing your research and thinking to publish, it is too late. It is too late because you may not have done anything that other people have not done. In other words, I have to know what has been already done, what are the main lessons from it, and I have to have a plan about how to create value for the readers, how to create new knowledge. New means I need to know what is old, right? Without knowing the old, I cannot know what is going to be new. So I have to figure that out before I start doing my research work. Otherwise, it's going to be too late. I have done all my experiments. I'm 3 years into my career. It's just too late to write good papers. You have to plan from get-go, from day one. Most important thing is that the main idea should be useful and completely new, fresh ideas. And how do I know it is fresh idea? It has to be supported by a thorough research. How do I do that thorough research? I must have databases accessible to me. Gone are the days when we used to go to the library and start reading 5 or 6 journals that are prominent journals in our field. That is how I did my research at the Indian Institute of Science in 70s. Not anymore. Now, you go to databases like Google, or you go to even better, Google search for, not for all papers, but let me see if I can change my screen. Maybe that's not going to be possible because I'm sharing this screen. Or you go to databases like Web of Science, but Web of Science is very expensive for most institutions. So Google Scholar is a good site. I would say Google Scholar rather than simply Google. Google Scholar can tell you a good bit of literature. Then you have to also talk to people who are more experienced about the impact of the research you are planning to undertake. That means what would constitute a significant advancement in the field. In other words, you need planning. Without planning, you cannot write good papers. Good paper is not, does not start with a given data set or given set of experiments that somebody has already done, because you never know what is the meaning of those experiments, where the experiments stand with respect to the existing literature, right? So planning is everything. You have to figure out what would happen if you are successful in doing the experiments you are planning to do, okay? By the time you have finished your experiments, it may be too late. It may be just too late to get anything worthwhile out of it. I mean, you may be able to publish something, but whether the publication is going to have an impact is what you are after. It's not publication for the sake of publication. It's publication that are useful to other people, that other people cite, right? If you are going to be in the business of research and teaching, you have to have lots of citations. That means you have to have evidence that your work is useful to other people. So that's very important. Scope and audience. You have to also know who are the intended audience. Are you writing something for a coffee table discussion? Are you writing something for other researchers? Or are you writing something that would become a book and sold in the airports? What exactly are you writing for? I think you have to have some clarity about what exactly you are after. And if you have some ideas, if you understand the scope, community of readers, and if you understand how timely your work is, you are ready to write. And so when you write a technical paper, what are the contents? Contents should be title, abstract, introduction, procedure, how you did your research, and what is it that you learned? So results and discussion. And finally, succinctly, you summarize what this is all about and provide citations so that every claim you make or every reason you gave to undertake that research is supported by evidence, and that evidence comes from the literature. So you have to cite references. So we will look at each of these topics. Now, let me stop here. And I bet some of you are thinking, title, what does he mean by title? What's there in title for me to listen to this, this person? Well, I didn't know until very recently exactly what's the process of finding a title for an article. And I suggest you pay attention. Why is that? Because if you look at the number of readers of your title, that's huge. Most people are deciding on the number of, on the title, whether to read any further your article or not. So there would be a huge audience for your title. So title is nothing to sneeze at. Typically 15 words or fewer, and it should have all your keywords. Most important part of your paper is going to be your title. If the title is not good, you are not going to have the audience you deserve, okay? Then comes abstract, where you succinctly communicate why people should be reading your work and what are the main findings. What are the novelty of your work? So here you have the opportunity to explain the novelty, describe in a succinct and short way what is this work all about and the main findings of your research. And then you have a little fewer audience here compared to the title. you have fewer audience with the abstract, and people then are making decision whether to read this further or not. If you have been able to favorably impress your readers, then people are going to read your 2 pages of introduction. I mean, 2 printed pages of introduction. And then everything else comes later on. So number of audiences decrease as you move down from the title to abstract to introduction to experimental procedure and so on. So awesome title is the decision reader makes to read or not to read based on title. Guide search engines. See, titles are always indexed. Indexed means if I go to Google Scholar, or if I go to Scopus, or if I go to Web of Science, titles are always there. So titles are the deciding factors whether people would read or not read, whether this hall is going to be filled up with people or there are only few people to be interested in the work. It should not contain symbols, abbreviations, equations. I will not write in a title the heat flow in GTA welding. I have to write heat flow in gas tungsten arc welding. In other words, there is no room for shortening abbreviations. The title should be short, between 10 and 15 words. But some journals have specific instructions. And an effective title should be packed with keywords. So this is the way you figure out how to write your title effectively. That means you close your eyes and think of maybe 5 or 6 keywords. And you then think, what are the most important of those 5 or 6 keywords? And you see if you can put those keywords into your title. If you are able to do that, you have an effective title. If you cannot pack your title with the keywords, your title is not effective. And therefore you will have less audience than you would have otherwise. So that's very important. An effective title should be packed with keywords. All right. So that's a very, very, very important lesson. Impactful abstract, it is seen first by the readers. So it's most important. So it shows and it gives you an opportunity to communicate the most important features of the paper. And that is why it's very important. And very often the journals will tell us how many words can the title contain. 100 to 200 words is common. It's occasionally 1 or 2 paragraphs, no references, and you should write the abstract last. When you know what contents you are able to emphasize, only then you should write the abstract. And remember, it's going to be read by many people. So it's a critical part of your paper. Although it is short, it has an disproportionately high impact. Introduction is, you have to give a compelling reason to read the paper through context, rationale, questions, hypotheses, and comparison with what is known. All of those things have to be included in your introduction. When it goes to the desk of an editor, the editor looks at one critical thing that we call prime novelty. What is important and what is new? And what does it contain that is so compelling? Unless that question can be answered very easily and very completely, the answer is going to be thank you for giving us an opportunity to review your paper. I regret the paper is not suitable for this journal. We suggest you take it to some other journal where it may have a greater impact. Well, essentially, I've been kicked out, and I feel very sad when that happens. But that happens most of the time because I was not able to explain the prime novelty of the work very easily to the editor. So how do I establish prime novelty? It is established through a succinct review of literature. Now, the purpose of the literature review is not to provide a historical account of who did what. That's the wrong way to look at it. The purpose is to identify gaps in knowledge so that that gap can be filled by what we have been doing. What's the subject matter of the paper? So without that prime novelty, nothing else is important. Nothing else matters. If I'm not able to establish prime novelty, the paper is not going to have an impact. So I need to do that. How is the work going to be different from what is available in the literature? How can I show that this work is going to be of immediate interest to a large community of readers? That is what we are trying to do. And the last paragraph would tell the readers what questions and hypotheses it's going to address and what's going to be the content of this paper. So that's probably 2 or 3 sentences. It starts with, here we show that the rock music is very important for the growth of rocks. Something like that. Of course, not that. I'm just giving you a ridiculous example. So it's going to be read by quite a few people, introduction. Experimental procedure and materials, it provides details that the work can be reproduced. And it's the author's responsibility to evaluate the quality and reproducibility of the data. That means we have to make sure that people understand the errors in our measurements, the reproducibility of our measurements. So all of those things have to be there in the experimental procedure and materials. It is not simply a description of what I have done. It's a critical analysis and data and evidence-based section to show that readers should have confidence on what we say, on our data, on our analysis. Our procedures are sound and that our data is accurate. All of those things have to be there in the procedure and material section. And finally comes results and discussion. Say I have plotted a function y as a function of another variable x. So I am plotting y versus x. Now I can say that the y changes with x in a linear manner. That is the wrong way to start a section. We have to interpret and not narrate. Everyone that is reading the paper and has a background can understand that y varies with x in a linear manner. So that is not a big finding. I have to tell them why y increases with x, or why y decreases with x, or why y is insensitive to x. If I cannot do that, I am not doing a good job in writing results and discussion. So we have to also point out that what is the big deal that y changes with x in a linear manner and that y decreases with x. we have to interpret and we have to tell the significance of that finding. And if I cannot find an answer, maybe this graph should not be in the paper because it's not significant. And we also have to point out the limitations. Say I have made a plot of Vickers hardness versus composition. I need to say in which composition range this particular relation is valid. If I cannot do that, then I'm not doing a good job. So I have to point out the limitations of the findings and uncertainties and errors in the data. Relevant shortcomings of the literature is a fair game. I can say that our data is better than Jones's, but it should not stop there. It has to have a purpose as to why I am comparing with the data given by Jones's, right? So there has to be a purpose. And if there are results that most people will find it surprising, then we have to discuss the unexpected results. Without that, the results and discussion will not be complete. It should be based on evidence and not authority. In other words, I should not think that my advisor thinks that my results are good. And that's good enough for a paper because my advisor is so knowledgeable. I agree with one thing, your advisors are very knowledgeable, but that is authority, that is not evidence, all right? I'll give you an example. Do you know who said women have fewer teeth than men? It's a very famous person. It's nobody other than the legend Aristotle. Aristotle was a very wise man, right? He had 2 wives. I think the first wife died, he married second time. But he never figured out how many teeth Mrs. Aristotle had. So, you know, here is the authority saying women have fewer teeth. And that's coming from Aristotle. Who is to challenge Aristotle? I would say opinions are not facts. Certainly, opinions are not new knowledge. So what I tell to my students as an advisor does not count. I'm sorry, it does not. And that's something I would tell them. Listen to me, but don't think that is the evidence. You have to find your evidence. Just like Mr. Aristotle never counted Mrs. Aristotle's number of teeth. So he didn't know that women had fewer teeth, right? So similarly, when you write your papers, count on the evidence. Do not count on authority. Yes, you are the authority. You want to be the authority. Linus Pauling believed that many diseases could be cured by vitamins. Not true. Cancer cannot be cured by vitamins, all right? Linus Pauling got 2 Nobel Prizes and he is an authority in chemistry. But authorities do not count while writing a paper. Please keep that in mind, all right? So very few people would read the papers that are based on authority. Conclusions, it has to have high impact. The findings must be sufficiently important to represent significant advancement of the field. It must fill up significant gaps in knowledge. It has to be brief, so we won't tell everything that has been found, but the most important ones. And of course, there is no place for tables, figures, data, equations, charts, pictures. They don't belong to conclusions. Okay. So now you have written your paper. You need to check it before you submit the paper for publication. You cannot just rush to publish, all right? So questions to ask: does the paper provide all the supports for all the claims that have been made in the introduction? Does it provide prime novelty? And evidence can be measurements, analysis, comparison, theory, case studies, literature, you name it. But it has to be based on evidence that all the claims are going to be judged. It should be free of mechanical defects. The figures and micrographs should be of high quality. Goes without saying, right? Check for missing figures. It happens. It happens especially in a review, because you may have 70 figures in a review, and the review paper may be 100 pages in printing, and it's not too difficult to miss a figure or two, or miss an equation, or miss a table just left out. Inappropriate formatting. And then, most important, get hold of a few people to read your papers, and those people should know what makes a great paper. That's important. You cannot just ask anyone, okay? They may correct your English, they may correct your composition, they may even be a creative writer. Not enough. Not enough. People have to know the criteria for publishing good papers. And then they can help you, and you should get their comments. Their comments are like a piece of gold. They can be critical, but they are useful. And writing always means rewriting. Most authors that write hundreds of papers writes them many times. They don't like what they write. I certainly don't like most of the time what I write first time. I have to write it many times before I give it to the editors to see whether my papers are acceptable or not. If you have no critics, you will probably have no success. So you need to have people who can give you critical comments. It's a key requirement. If you don't have that, then you will be in trouble. And then there are ethics. Compliance with copyright law. Just like I cannot take your car and sell it to another person, right? Because the car belongs to you and not to the other person, not to me. So I cannot sell your car. Similar thing, we have to honor the ownership of all the material we use for our paper. Say I'm taking a figure from somebody else's paper. I have to properly take permission to use that figure, because the figure does not belong to me. So the paper, I am the author, so it's my job to take permission from the copyright holder. Sometimes the permission comes with a price. If you want a paper published in Nature to be used as evidence for something you want to say in your paper, you have to pay. But you want to take a figure from Elsevier journals, it's free of charge just for the asking. So most of the time we try to use papers and evidence from those publications that allow us to use them for non-profit purpose, free of charge, okay? Nature would not be one of those. Editors and reviewers also cannot use the comments or the knowledge in the manuscript to enrich themselves, or to take the contents and use it in their proposals or use it in their papers. They cannot do that. That's not ethical. A manuscript cannot also be submitted simultaneously to more than one journal. You have permission to submit it to one journal at a time. If the paper is rejected, sometimes the editors will suggest other journals because the contents do not fit the particular journal where we submit. And there are today ways of checking plagiarism. Plagiarism is not that uncommon. We have the temptation, it's getting late and I need to finish this paper, so I take a few lines from somebody else's paper. That is unethical, and that can be checked very easily with software. So today, an editor can use a software and figure that out. And if one is caught in plagiarism, one can be banned from publishing in that journal for a while. So conflicts of interest. We also have to disclose conflicts of interest. Otherwise, there is a problem. So now you have got a paper you have written, you have got it reviewed by some people you know, you are ready to submit to a journal. There are many journals. Where do you submit? Do you start with Nature and Science and Nature Reviews and Progress in Material Science? Or do you start with some other journal that has a lower rating? So you have to select a journal where you have a reasonable chance of getting published, right? If you aim too high, then it may result in frustration. And if you aim too low, then you are underselling your work. Then your work will not be publicized as well as it could be. So it's a delicate balance, and you have to know where to submit. Now, how do you figure out where to send your paper? How do you know which journal is appropriate? Area of focus. You will not publish a work on heat treatment or machine design to a journal that publishes welding and joining, right? So that's one type of classification. Second thing, once you have figured out the field, you have to also figure out how journals are rated. Do you know that? Why is Science or Nature rated higher than Acta Materialia? You have to know those things. How is the journal rating useful to authors? Match your manuscript content with journals' coverage in the field, rating, and ability to promote articles. What do I mean by that? If you publish in a mainstream Elsevier journal, it probably goes to 5 million subscribers in China, and the chance that your paper is going to be cited is much higher than if you publish a paper in a society journal, for example, where the number of subscribers may be 10,000 or 20,000. So 1 million is certainly better than 20,000. And so you need to know which journals are having more subscriptions than some other journals. So journal-dependent citations of 3 similar papers. I am showing it from my own experience. Journal A is Elsevier, Journal B is Springer Nature, and Journal C is a society journal. I published 3 similar but distinctive different papers, more or less at the same time in 3 journals. And look at the citations I got. 186 people cited one of my papers. A similar paper published in a Nature Springer journal got only 120 citations, and a society journal only got 81. So, you know, it could be 2 to 1, and you want your papers to be cited more than cited less. You want everybody to read your work. After all, you have spent so much of hard work on this. So it's very important that you know how journals are ranked, what their readerships are, how many people read those journals, and so on. So here is an impact factor. Impact factor is one way to actually figure out whether or not the journal is going to be able to publicize your work adequately for citation. Of course, they also are very careful in filtering out which papers they publish and which papers they do not. Nature review materials, on an average paper published in Nature review materials in a year will be cited 74 times. Whereas if you go to Nature materials, it will be cited, average paper published in Nature materials will be cited about 39 times a year. If you go with the Nature group and publish in scientific reports, you can expect that the paper will be cited about 4 times. And if you go in Nature partner groups computational materials, it will be cited on an average 9 times a year. So it is very important to know how many times in a year the paper is likely to be cited if published in a particular journal. So it's important. Now we come to the peer review process. So what is a peer review? Author submits a manuscript. Preliminary review is done by the editor, and the editor decides if the prime novelty is strong enough for the paper to be sent out, if the paper is well written, if it can be read well by most people, and then decide whether to send it out or not. Most of the time, they will probably send it out for review, and then expert reviewers often would provide many suggestions for changes. So based on those, the author will revise the manuscript and eventually submit it again, and the editor will then accept the revised manuscript. That's the typical outflow of material. But not always. Not all manuscripts may be even peer reviewed. The editor may decide it does not fit, or it's not of high quality. It does not have adequate prime novelty. It does not have impactful conclusions. It does not have a well-written structure of the paper. The paper may not be readable by majority of the readers. So a large fraction will be rejected before the peer review because of these problems. Many journals will accept about 20% or less of the manuscripts received, all right? Expert reviewers are busy. So they're getting requests from many journals. So they don't have time to read everything. So they have to be selective. So editors will not send out everything they receive for peer review. It's not practical. So pre-submission tasks and journal selection are the responsibility of the authors, okay? And only then the authors should be able to expect good results. So authors have a lot to do with all of those things. And reviewers' job is to help improve the manuscripts, all right? Most people think that their primary job is to accept or reject. It's wrong. Reviewers do not accept or reject. Reviewers can give advice to the editor. Editor decides whether to accept or reject. There are occasions where 3 referees are saying, reject it, and the editor decides to accept it. Or there are times where 3 referees are saying, accept it, and editor decides to reject it. So the reviewer's job is not really to accept or reject. The reviewer's job is to help improve the manuscript. That's the primary job. And reviewers often suggest optional or mandatory revisions. And those are gifts. Those are free gifts from people who are knowledgeable in the field. And after the manuscript is revised, a point-by-point response to the referee's comments are needed for further consideration of the manuscript. All right? And what if the manuscript is not accepted? Let's say I have done everything that we discussed, and finally the verdict is out. Our paper, our manuscript is rejected, and I spend a whole year working on it, writing the paper, getting reviews, addressing those reviews, and ultimately they said, thank you, but no thank you, we won't be publishing your paper. So some people would say, what now? Well, this is not the end of the world. Rejection is temporary, an opportunity to publish a better paper. Very often, if you go to a high impact factor journal like Science or Nature Materials, rejection is more likely than acceptance the first time. So you have to be ready to improve the paper at the end of the process, and it will make you a better author. Okay. You may think that this is not a good thing. So I would recommend this particular talk by the writers, the famous writer J.K. Rowling, okay, Harry Potter writer. And she gave a talk at Harvard University that says, whose title was Fringe Benefits of Failure. As far as I am concerned, I have learned more from my so-called failures than my so-called successes, if I have any success at all. So I think this is not the end of the world. That is what I want to tell you. Summary, journal papers are meant to communicate new knowledge. So the key word is new. So it must avoid duplication. Guidelines are generally available, okay, for assembling each component of the paper are generally available. And we also have a pre-submission checklist. The checklist is useful for us to make sure that we are doing our best before we submit our manuscripts. And we must be careful in selecting our journals based on its scope, its rating, and ability to promote articles. And the peer review process uses expertise of leading researchers to improve manuscripts and helps authors and the community. So that is all I have to say. Happy publishing, and thank you so very much for listening to me. I know your time is important, and I am very, very grateful for this opportunity to talk with you. And I thank all the organizers, and especially our host, for giving me this opportunity to say my side of publications. Happy publishing.
Yes, sir.
And all the best to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, thank you so much.
Okay,
Sir, let us take some questions, sir, if possible.
sure.
Yes, sir. So participants, those who wants to clarify doubts with sir, you can raise your hands. Probably we can take 3 or 4 questions. You can raise your hands, then I will permit you to ask the question with sir.
So I think it tells me that I must have been very, very clear.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, sir. And I am looking for a few questions and what they have posted.
So can I ask a few questions to you?
Yes, sir. Please, please, sir.
How many of you publish regularly? Raise your hand.
You can raise your hands.
Do you know how to raise your hand? Can you show them how to raise their hands?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We got, sir. People have raised their hands. I am allowing them, sir. I am allowing them. Dr. Sachin Hausik, you can ask your doubt with sir.
Is his microphone muted?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I have given permission. And so, Dr. Sachin Hausik.
Somebody is raising physically hand. I can see Mr. Ramamurthy is raising his hand, but you know, today we live in the electronic media. So I think when Dr. Dinakar is asking for raising the hand, he's not asking for physical raising of the hand.
Mr. Nitesh Reddy, Mithilesh Roy, you can ask 2 questions to sir. Ask the questions to sir.
I cannot hear a thing. So their microphones must be muted.
Yes, sir. And I am allowing them. And,
okay.
Please. So, okay. Subhashini Shankar, you can ask the question to sir. Subhashini Shankar. You can ask if you have doubt, you can ask to sir.
Yeah, sir. Thank you, sir. Oh, sir, and thank you for English, sir. How can I create the international journal, sir?
Forgive me for interrupting, but I cannot hear a thing. Can you say it again?
You can post your question to the chat box. We will ask on behalf of you to sir. You are having a lot of disturbance.
Thank you, sir.
And now you can. Now it is clear. Ask. Now it is clear.
Okay, can you please repeat your question?
Yeah, sir. How to differentiate national journal and international journal?
National journal and international journal. You know, there is no such thing as national science or international science. So I would say I don't see a distinction. I can tell you about my own experience. When I wrote my first paper in Indian Institute of Science, my advisor was a very well-established scientist, Professor K.P. Abraham, who was the department head in metallurgy. He told me to submit my paper to Indian Institute of Metals Journal. So I told him that I wanted to publish it in the very best journal in the world. At that time in my field, it was metallurgical and metallurgical transactions. And Professor Abraham told me that no, normally they don't publish our work. It's very difficult to publish there. So you will be disappointed if you try to do that. So publish in Indian Institute of Metals Transactions. And we had this discussion 2 or 3 times. And my fellow students, seniors, told me, De Broglie, you are such a fool. You don't know who you are talking with. You will be kicked out of the Indian Institute of Science in a split second. You got an opportunity to come here and do research under Professor Abraham, and you are arguing with him. All right? So I told Professor Abraham, sir, why is it we cannot publish there? So he said, no, you need to know people. And there were so many other reasons. I mean, he was right. It's difficult to publish from India in top-notch international journals. But I said, I persisted for 3, 4, 5 days. And to my surprise, I was not kicked out of Indian Institute of Science. Professor Abraham threw me a challenge. You write the paper and you communicate it. I will be a co-author, but I will not correct your paper, and let me see what result you get. So I submitted, and I got such a big bad review. the paper was almost going to be rejected. I didn't know how to write a paper. I didn't know how to structure a paper. But the referee said, if they can fix all these problems, then the content, I am prepared to review it again and see whether it's publishable. And fortunately, it took a little more time, but my paper was published. My very, very first paper of my career was published in Metallurgical Transactions. That was the very first paper. So my suggestion to you would be, start with a higher goal. And never mind if other people say that what you have created is not good enough. Certainly they told me that, and certainly I didn't listen. And I did not regret. Yeah, I felt really sad that my paper was scolded so badly by the referee. And I deserved this scolding because, you know, I couldn't write well and I was learning by failure. There are better ways of learning than what I went through. And my advisor was perhaps one of the best advisors that anyone could have. So I respect his knowledge and his experience, although sometimes I had my own reasons not to obey everyone that I respected. I still respect him more than most people, okay? So my suggestion is, forget the difference. There is no such thing as national science and international science. There is only science. So go for the best journals in your field. And if you get a rejection, don't give up, because rejection and failure are two different things. Rejection is not a failure. Rejection is an opportunity for you to do even better.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for sharing your inspiring story also. The next question, sir. Ms. Madhusudan Sautri, you can ask the question to sir.
Hello.
Hello. I'm sorry, I cannot hear a word.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Can you repeat it? If you can hear his question, can you please repeat it? Your microphone seems to be very good.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Hello, sir. Can you hear me, sir?
I can.
You can go ahead.
I can hear you.
Okay. What is the difference between review paper and research paper?
The difference is profound. A review paper does not require your own results or your own experiments. All right? Although experiments can be very broadly defined. A review paper brings out the gaps in knowledge for the benefit of the beginner researchers. It also provides an outlook and the current status and recent progress of a field. So a review paper is much more difficult to write than a technical paper. Without writing dozens of technical papers, I do not recommend that people start writing review papers, because the review paper must give a perspective for the writer to talk about the current situation in the field.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Ms. Muthulakshmi, you can ask your questions to start if you are very clear.
Hello.
Please, you can
Hello.
go ahead. Muthulakshmi, madam, you can go ahead. Okay. Sir, Ms. Seema has asked one question.
Okay.
And sir, she wants to know about the call for book chapters.
Call for book chapters. Again, the book chapter also must be written by experienced writers. I mean, people write book chapters that nobody reads. You don't want to write such book chapters, because when you are spending your time and energy to write something, you want an outcome that is favorable to your hard work, right? And therefore, you need to be selective in what you write and what you refuse to write. My suggestion is that you write a book chapter or you write a review only when you have written dozens of peer-reviewed journal papers. So you have an idea of how to actually market your findings, how to actually market your research through effective communication with your readers. Did I answer your question?
Sir, yes, sir. Well, sir. And sir, one student, he is a master student.
Yes.
Midhilesh Roy, he has asked one question. Sir, I am master student, so I got lesser duration, around 6 to 8 months to work in project. So, sir, can you give some idea to go for novelty work during, even though we have very lesser period during MTech?
Yes, there is a very well-established procedure in institutions of higher learning for doing that. We recognize that the students are beginner researchers, and that is why we assign an advisor or a guide to supervise. The guide's primary job is not to tell what to do, but how to do. That means the guide must be able to show the researcher how to do a literature survey, must be able to explain why literature survey is critical before a work is undertaken, how to find gaps in knowledge, and why the particular problem that is selected is going to have an impact on the field. In other words, it's a shared responsibility between the supervisor and the student to figure out what problem to work on. Because if you work on a problem that is basically a dead end, that's not going to have much more impact. It does not then matter how hard you work, because after all, the problem has been partly solved, or the problem may not have an impact, and therefore you should not be working on it. The time is not that critical a factor. People can write, people can do enough work and write an effective paper, an impactful paper in 6 months. So just because you are a master student is not a disadvantage. It may actually be an advantage. You have fresh thoughts, you have energy, you have enthusiasm. These are important ingredients for doing exceptional work. And I wish you well.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Sir, thank you so much. The last question we'll take, sir. And
okay.
Mr. Sej Chandran had asked this question. Sir, what is the view on review paper and research paper? Are they weighed equally?
Review papers are cited much more. If you want to establish reputation in a field, you have to write good review papers. But it has a higher bar than technical papers. Not everyone can review a paper. People must have a good perspective of the current status and recent progress in the field and the gaps in knowledge in order for an effective review paper to be published in a good journal. Did I answer your question?
You have answered well. Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for joining with us. And even though with busy schedules, you have made a wonderful presentation, and I believe that this will highly helpful for the for coming researchers, and they can enhance the writing skills with the presentation. And thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for being with us. It is very happy to have a wonderful session from you, sir.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. You know, this talk is not really meant for advanced researchers and advisors. It's meant for young students who are starting. So my question, did you actually record this session? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Did you actually record this session?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You did?
Yes, sir.
So is it possible I may be able to get a copy?
Sure, sir. I will share it immediately, sir. I will share it, sir.
So if you put it in a box or somewhere else, file sharing media, then I can download it.
Sure, sir. I will make it, sir. I will make it, sir.
Thank you again very, very much for organizing this, and thank you for this opportunity.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. We will meet in some other occasion, sir. Thank you, sir. I come to your inbox, sir. Thank you, sir.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Participants, thank you so much. It was our boon to have a very good lecture from a very genius and eminent professor. I feel, I don't know how you are feeling. I feel I am highly blessed by hearing this lecture. It is, whenever we are, especially I am working on welding, additive manufacturing and computational mechanics. So whenever I see the Journal of Science and Technology, Welding Technology of Welding in the Taylor and Francis, I used to see the editors, and because of that impression, I have a mail to Sir, and it is our boon. He has accepted our request and has given a nice presentation. And thank you so much for joining with us. And I ask Sir, if Sir permits, I will also share this video to all. And we will see in some other occasions. And tomorrow, as it was said, tomorrow we have one-day workshop on Industry 4.0. So in that, Professor Arunachalam from IIT Madras is going to share this lecture, and other Dr. Swarna Ravindra Babu, he's the CEO of Coom Systems, as well as the advisor of Institutional Innovation Council, Chennai Institute of Technology, and Mr. Rajesh, Additional General Manager,